They're cash rich, but financially poor. And the finance department is playing catch up, and they're speaking from the past a little too much.
Alex Glueckler, Vice President of Accounting at CrossFit. He is a leader whose impressive career spans over 18 years in finance, accounting, and operations.
Finance teams in well-run businesses are strategic partners. They're not number crunchers. They're proactive. They're here to enable business growth. If we're starting a new project, immediately finance is going to be included in this decision.
It's all great being a visionary, but you need it based in a source of truth. And so having financials that tell you the actual story helps with that.
As you get into a leadership role, you realize it's less about you and more about your team. Focusing on the team's growth has been really neat to see. I view leadership role as my job is to clear the obstacles away from the team.
What's one common financial oversight companies should avoid?
Really dwindles down to inefficient record keeping. You need to.
Welcome to 5 to 50, Financial Strategies for Growing Companies, the podcast that gives business owners and entrepreneurs the tools to scale with confidence. I'm your host, Jeff Rudner. In every episode, we unpack proven strategies that optimize finances, improve cash flow, and leverage technology that all drive growth. So whether you're a founder, a CEO, or an advisor supporting businesses, you'll hear from proven experts and leaders sharing experiences and insights that you can use to help your company thrive. Let's build smarter, scale faster, and take our business to the next level. Hey everyone, I am super excited to welcome Alex Glueckler, Vice President of Accounting at CrossFit today. He is a leader whose impressive career spans over 18 years in finance, accounting, and operations. Alex brings a ton of experience from his leadership roles in private equity-backed companies, demonstrating a profound ability to steer financial strategies that enhance business performance and growth. At CrossFit, Alex is pivotal in driving strategic finance, ensuring compliance, and managing global accounting operations, aligning financial goals with the organization's mission to improve health, happiness, and performance worldwide. Today, we'll delve into how Alex's leadership has shaped the financial landscape across multiple companies. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So I want to dive into the start of your career and what drew you to the field of finance.
Yeah, sure. I think, I sometimes blame my dad for getting into finance accounting because he said, you're anal retentive and you're good in numbers. You should go do that back when I was in college. But the reality is I was always interested in business, and I think finance and numbers was really the language of business, right? Always finance was able to kind of tell you a story about, what's going on with the company and how to really drive strategic decisions. So over the years, especially in today's economy where you don't know what's going to be on the news or which way the direction the economy is going to take, a lot of that passion's really evolved into a focus on long-term resilience and adaptability. So not just about maximizing profits, but really ensuring that a company can have some sustainable growth and how it can navigate uncertainty depending on what stage you're in. So that's what I really have had a passion for, and has kind of led me down this road.
Awesome. You really need both in companies. You need finance and accounting. I like to think of accounting as telling the story of what happened, and finance interpreting that to tell the story of what is going to happen. And those play really well together, but they're pretty different too, right?
They are. But I think you need both, really. Like you said, I mean, they play two different roles, but I always try to tell people that if you're gonna get into this world, you have to have a really good foundation of both. I always say kind of paying your dues, earn your stripes.
Yep.
I think a lot of times in today's world, we get into, we want to get into AI or all these new technologies, or, software drives us to, if I'm being honest, that is great, but you have to really know what you're doing first, right? To be able to catch those things. So much data that we're jumping into and using. But if we're not using it based off of through the lens of a solid foundation of knowledge of both accounting and finance, it's really kind of a disservice. So those that are wanting to go down the FP&A route, it's great. Best suggestion I would say is get to become friends with somebody in the accounting department, and they can help you. And same thing, vice versa. Accounting department, really understand what the FP&A department is doing, because it not only helps foundationally, but it'll also help your career in just understanding what they're going through.
Yeah, it makes sense. FP&A for our listeners is financial planning and analysis. And so for business owners, how does finance and accounting play in the decisions they're making, or leaders? How should finance and accounting ideally play to support goals and results?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally the finance and accounting department, we'll just call it the finance department, the CFO org, they really need to be a partner in the organization. I think there are companies that kind of put baby in the corner, so to speak. They're the bookkeepers. They kind of get the numbers, and it's an afterthought because you just have to file taxes or do an audit or all these different compliance pieces. The reality is there's a lot of knowledge there. There's a lot of information there that operations and ownership can take. I think that you can really glean a lot from it if you view them as a business partner. So as a business partner, that's a lot of it's being proactive, being in the initial conversations of doing something. Not that you're expected to go in there and add a lot to the conversation, but keep your eyes and ears open. Listen to how things are going down, so you have an understanding of when the numbers come in, what's going on, and how you can present those numbers accurately. So when it comes time to reviewing those numbers or reviewing any financial decisions that go on in the company, you're viewing it through a very similar lens, not just of what's going on, but what the intent or where you're trying to go with the company is. So I think being part of those proactive conversations, your team is knowledgeable of kind of the company objectives to kind of hit the target of where they want to go, but how you can kind of help them get there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that can be gleaned from that.
Yeah, of course. And everyone needs to be speaking the same language and understand what the truths are, right?
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is to use the same numbers, to communicate the same numbers throughout the business, to define what the KPIs are and have everyone understand how they're being calculated and tracked. So that way you can be rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, exactly. I think some companies, when they're starting out, their owners are running so fast they don't know which way to go, and so a lot of decision making is kind of at the seat of your pants, so to speak.
Yeah. Or just looking at the cash balance, which
exactly
may or may not tell you the whole story.
And that's a perfect example of a pitfall, right? I mean, you look at startups, especially startups that get funding early on, right? Their cash balance looks great. They start signing, contracts, or they start getting involved in the stuff. They're cash rich, but financially poor. And then on top of that, you compound it with siloing the accounting finance department. You kind of get into this really big issue, because then the finance department is playing catch up, and they're speaking from the past a little too much, and you aren't really able to know where you are financially, especially because a lot of times they're just trying to keep up with everything, and maybe the presentation of where those pieces on the financials, they're not inaccurate, but they're not as well as they could be, right? You're expensing some things that, hey, maybe that's an asset that you want to throw on the balance sheet for, and show it and capitalize over time, and show as potential long-term value with a company, and depending on what the company is trying to do, and so a lot of times ownership is really kind of, hey, if I need to get to this next mark to get funding. Private equity is really concerned about my EBITDA number, so I need to have EBITDA look as good as possible. And it's like, okay, I get that, and the job of that financial leadership side is to understand the parameters that ownership is trying to get to, especially in the startup world, but even in growth stage companies, be able to kind of articulate and then translate for them and help them kind of guide certain decisions that really ought to be made. It's a hard world. I've been through a number of startups, and the CEOs that drive it have a special talent to handle a lot of stress at one time.
Same here. Yeah, we work with a lot of clients in the space, and sometimes having that finance team is reassuring to the founders, because it's like having an adult in the room. It's all great being a visionary and communicating and believing you're going to change the world, but you need it based in a source of truth. And so having financials that tell you the actual story helps with that.
Yeah, I think there's an article I read. It was called something like the strategic no of the CFO, and I think that it's really funny because CFOs always have this persona that they just sit there. They're the ones that say no to everything. I think nowadays you have to be kind of a jack of all trades in the CFO seat. You have to know a lot. You have to be in. You have to have an understanding of where the company is, the culture, the mission, the objectives, to be able to translate that, but then also be a key leader in data analytics, how the software is set up, have a very acute understanding of that side of the house too. And, there's all this side, like you always are the person that says no. And I think the step beyond that, right, is not just saying no, but being able to translate it, right? Like you said, the adult in the room, right? It's really easy for the parent to just say no because I said so. It's also makes it infinitely better if you can say no, but you're also guiding them in a way that you can get to yes, or you can get to a, hey, here's the path,
Yep.
right? So it's not just a, hey, no, we can't do this, but like, hey, if we're trying to achieve this, here are some of the things that we're going to run against. Let's figure out some opportunities that we can navigate around. And achieve the goal that we are, and do it in a way where, despite what's going on in the economy, the volatility of the economy, how can we be adaptable, and how can we just always have that North Star and make little tweaks along the way, but still kind of stay focused. That's the other thing, right? Like startups, they'll go and they'll be like, okay, we're going to do this. And then they get funding and they're like, well, we could do this and this, and then this and this and this. And they this shiny object syndrome kind of jumps out.
Absolutely.
And so you again have to be the parent in the room and say, okay, guys, this is what the money's for. And this is what we have to do.
Yeah. And it's not even just startups, it's entrepreneur-led companies that are trying to scale however they can. They're always looking for new opportunities. The entrepreneurial mindset is an active mind, always looking for shiny objects that can make more money. But it was important to keep focused and don't cut your nose off to spite your face. Don't go in one direction that's going to make you lose your bread and butter.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that that's what entrepreneurs are, right? They're the ideas, right, in the room. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I mean, it's great. It's what gets the company going. Being able to tamper that switch a little bit as an entrepreneur and say, okay, we got to sit down and focus. I've been in a couple where we have lost focus, and the conversation is like, okay, we're not Johnson and Johnson, or some other large conglomerate that has lots of different labels, right? And the important thing to think about is a company like Johnson and Johnson was very good at one thing when they first started, and it took them years to get really, really awesome at that. And then, only then, did they build upon that. And so having that solid foundation, having that establishment of what a friend of mine calls their bailiwick, understanding like what they do really well, set themselves up for success, and then build upon that. Because when you do have those extra ideas, it's so easy when you're on that foundation and you have that solid, when you have that differentiator in the industry and you're really good at something, it is really easy to say, okay, let's get involved into this because we can just we could over leverage everything that we have here to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Awesome. So let's take a specific example from throughout your career where finance played a key role in making a strategic decision. What were the metrics that were really important to that decision, and how did that analysis help the business grow?
Yeah. I think, when it comes to data, I'm really big at keep it simple. At least keep it simple from the start. So a number of times when you're starting a business, you're building like a financial model, especially for building a business plan. And that financial model, you really wanted to hone in on a couple of key pieces. I remember sometimes getting into retail side of things on the CPG side. We would just very simply, look at something very, like top line revenue. Hey, what revenue targets do we want to hit? And how do we want to see growth year over year, or even month over month, quarter over quarter? And we broke it down and we said, okay, if we could get X amount of people in the door every day, and we could get Y amount for the average ticket price, right? So if I know how many people I get in the door and the average ticket price, I could back into a revenue target, right? Like if I get 10 people in the door every day, 30 days per month average, and an average ticket price of $10, you have what your revenue is, and you can just say, hey, I need to achieve these, get more people things in the door. Those are just 2 KPIs, right? That's it. And that became the very crux of just what was a weekly dashboard that we would talk about. And if one of the cool part is if you simplify it like that, if one of those are off, then you can dive into the data, because now you're diving into like very specific data, right? I'm not getting enough people in the door. Okay, what am I doing wrong here, and how can I be more intentional about getting more people in the door? If my ticket price isn't high enough, right? Like, am I selling? And then you can kind of get into the product side. If what I'm selling isn't right, if the product mix isn't there, if I'm priced wrong, if it's a small retail facility, are the people being told and trained to upsell? Just very, very specific. I'd say 2 to 3 KPIs is really where I tend to go, because you've got so many other things going on, and just being able to have, a couple indicators of like, hey, if I hit this, and I hit this, I'm generally on target. And it prevents you from diving so far into the weeds that all the other distraction every month that's going to hit you. When you're looking at the financials every month with ownership, and they're like, well, I've got pressures from this, I got pressures from investors, I've got, this person wants to get in business with us, this, I want to go here, I want to go there. Now they have 50 decisions that they want to make in a month. And, it's just like, hey, this is our 3 pieces that we're trying to hit and we're trying to nail. And once we get that down, we build a base, and that can grow. Then we can start looking at 1 or 2 at a time. When we start talking about financial decision making, keep it simple and try to stay on course while making small corrections. Don't overcorrect, right? And then make those KPIs something that you can drill into very specifically and very intentionally, and do that. So
that's amazing. I love that. Yeah, we see so many companies just overanalyze or break down or create so many KPIs. It's impossible to track, and they're not even sure what each KPI is supposed to track. But someone thought about it, so they put it on a dashboard. And then you get a dashboard that has 30 metrics, and no one can tell you what's working and what's not. So I love the idea of keeping it simple, so that way you get everyone rowing in the same direction and starting the analysis in the same place.
Yeah. I think when you have too much going on in slides, in dashboards, then it snowballs, right? I mean, your meetings become meetings for meeting's sake, right? Now you're going into all these different things. Your brain hurts when you leave. And the reality is your job as the financial leader is to have disseminated that, be able to provide very, acute or very refined metrics to be able to just say, hey, we're on the right track. We built this model. This is the projection that we're trying to get to, or, hey, this is the goal for the end of the year. If we stay on this track, we're doing great. And are there anything that can come in the way of, hitting this? Take that retail, for example. There's a big event coming up in the future. Okay, now let's start planning for that, right? I mean, then that becomes a conversation I want to be part of, as opposed to, hey, how did we do last month? Okay, this is what's going on here. This is what's going on. And then now it's a 30-minute meeting of everything, and I'd rather use that time to just be specific about where we can improve and go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk about the different seasons of a business and how the financial strategy of businesses should change over time. We talked about startups. You've worked and experienced companies of small size, of large size. How do the needs of the finance of the company change over time when as it relates to the finance function when you're early versus large company?
Yeah. I think when you're starting up, a lot of focus is on building process procedures, internal controls. I think when you're more established, a lot of those have been built, and the conversation is at least with looking at processes and procedures, how can I refine that? How can I maybe adjust that to meet the current need, the current size of the company. When it comes to financial reporting, I think as you get larger, the complexity gets larger. The growth of the company has created so much more data. You have a lot to look at behind you, which can help guide you in the going forward. It can also kind of distract, but in reality, when you're in a startup, a lot of it's going to be focused on building the process and procedures and kind of taking a little bit more of a magnifying glass of making sure we're getting everything in that needs to get in the right place. We're reporting it correctly. So very almost, building that structure, building the gates up ahead of time. As you get larger, it's not that needs to go away, but it's refinement of how can we be the business partner to these growing departments.
Yeah, that makes sense. A lot of times, the way I think about it is early on, there's not that many people that need to know how the business is doing from a financial standpoint. It might just be the owner or the management team. But as you scale, you might have investors, you might have a bank that you borrowed money from you have a revolving credit facility. You need to start doing financials for them. You always need to file tax. So you need to have a team or a person that's responsible for making sure that's done right. And then you expand into other regions, other states, other countries, the requirements scale as the company scales. So
and the transparency too, like you were saying, right? I mean, the leveled transparency across different pieces is a big deal, right? Departments need to know what's going on. When I first got out of a CPA firm, I was working at a place called Athletes Performance. It's called Exos now. They were getting into corporate wellness, and I was reporting directly to the CFO, and this new division. You have all these people, they have never seen the financials before. This is a company that's pretty well established. There just really wasn't that culture of sharing that. And it's, hey, we want, the board certainly sees it. The officers of the companies certainly see it. But the CFO was, kind of at this point of saying, hey, we need to make better decisions operationally. We're getting so large, to your point, that these people are making key business decisions in their own departments or business lines that probably could use financial, some backed financial knowledge or just some basic metrics. So building a lot of that, working with those teams, understanding the information that they need, why they need it, is a pretty big, and it's an important task. And to be honest with you, it's a great point that you made. It's just as you grow, that becomes a piece too, right? Like, how can we get the right information, be transparent enough at different levels?
Yep. Awesome. So thinking about the best finance teams or how the best companies run, in your experience, how have the best companies you've been involved with run their finance teams, and how do they utilize finance in their business?
Finance teams in well-run businesses are strategic partners, right? They're not number crunchers. They're proactive. They're data-driven, and their focus and the culture around the finance team is they're here to enable business growth. How can we get them involved? We're going to start something new. We're going to immediately companies that have well-run finance teams. If we're starting a new project. So right now in CrossFit, the CrossFit Open just was announced yesterday. Hundreds of thousands of people log in on a singular YouTube show, and they announce a CrossFit workout once a week for the next 3 weeks. And hundreds of thousands of people do this workout, and it's the pipeline to go to what's eventually the CrossFit Games that everyone sees on ESPN. And it's really funny because the sport team that runs that, to their point, to their credit, as soon as they're thinking about, hey, what's the prize got to be? How do we need to structure this new way? Immediately we're like, hey, finance is going to be included in this decision. And it became great because I brought in people from my team, and they were thinking, even the people that are helping with filing the 1099s next year, right, are immediately thinking, okay, what do we need? What information do we need to collect from people for prize money? What information do we need from vendors beforehand? PO processes are not always the most glamorous thing in the operation side. So they're immediately thinking, okay, how can we make this better for them? If it's under a certain amount, can we streamline that process? And so getting them into these proactive calls is a huge deal.
Yep.
So I think that becomes that's what I mean by business partner, is that when the project's happening or something new's coming on, they're included, and it's not even a question.
And they're included upfront, not after the fact, right?
Mm-hmm.
So much of what we work with our clients on is let us know before things are going to happen, so that way we can advise and make recommendations and likely improve your process through reporting, making sure your vendors are paid on time, making sure you collect your revenue, the invoice that you worked so hard to earn, that sale you worked so hard to earn, make sure you actually get paid on time for it. Building the processes that help enable the future goals of the business.
It helps culturally too, right? Yeah. I mean, we don't want to be the people that say, hey, all invoices go here. Don't forget your PO. Like, we don't want to be the nag.
Yep.
But if there are people that are kind of missing things, and it happens. I mean, new people come on, they don't know the process. We're primarily a virtual company. We've got about 150 full-time, another 100 part-time. And we serve in 150 countries, 155 plus countries. We have about 11,000 affiliates. So it's not a small task that we have at CrossFit. So we have a lot going on, and sometimes processes get mixed. And so we don't want to be the people that, are nagging, hey, don't forget to send your invoices through this process, or if you've got it ahead of time. And so, nothing's perfect. But I think the piece to this is just always, working and establishing relationships with leadership in each line of business, making sure that we're at the forefront, like you said, beforehand, helps minimize that. Right. Yeah. Because if not, then you've closed year end, and then a month later it's, hey, I've got this invoice from last November. Do you need that? So we're going through an audit right now. What are you talking about? Yeah. But at the same time, nothing's perfect, but we try to be as close as we can. Because the other side of it is the financial leaders, if they have that established relationship, understand not only the reason why we need it, but why they need it. Right. Yeah. Because if the information's bad, garbage in, garbage out with data. If the information's bad, then they're making decisions based on bad information.
So how did they instill this culture of embedding finance throughout the business?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's real easy to go the opposite way, right? And silo that. When I came on at CrossFit, the CFO was originally kind of come on, was interim CEO for a little bit, was kind of trying to tackle a couple things, interim CMO. And so knew the accounting department, or kind of foresaw this accounting department kind of get siloed a little bit. And so a lot of what I was tasked with when I first came on was really, hey, we need some more level of transparency. We need to build the relationships back up again. So it was on me and my team to start establishing relationships early on. So when I came on, I was fortunate enough, we had really great documented processes and procedures. Company's been around for 24 plus years. It's gone through its iterations, let's just say, Frankenstein systems and approaches, and we've constantly been trying to get better. But we've done a great job of documenting process and procedures, and we had a great team that was able to get a lot of the transactional components of the accounting and finance side done. The other side of it, though, was we need to start getting out there and getting involved. So a lot of what I was tasked with and working with even the FP&A side is how can we get upfront more? How can we get that information more? And then on top of that, how do we kind of dispel those negative connotations with process and procedures, internal controls, right? Because a lot of times, when we're told after the fact, we're the nags after the fact, and then our processes seem cumbersome to them. Whereas if we knew ahead of time what was going on and they knew ahead of time the process, it actually goes pretty smoothly.
Right.
But it's kind of ingraining that. So a lot of it was just getting involved in meetings, working with them ahead of time, establishing really good relationships. And, I came to CrossFit because I have a personal passion for what CrossFit is. And I could say that about most of the people. I mean, I would venture to say the people here at CrossFit, it's very cultural, mission driven. And so we're very fortunate in that respect. And I think that there's a lot of carryover with what CrossFit is, working through hard things, getting better together, strong community. And I think just that mentality of being able to tackle things head on. I think that it was really easy to start those relationships with that kind of like-minded cultural approach.
I love that. It sounds like it makes a lot of sense, for a lot easier to get buy-in for people that believe that in their physical health is important, to explain that financial health is just as important for the company.
Yeah. And it's, I think that I think that that's, culturally we know, even through workouts, but, anything that we're doing, I jokingly say, so the definition of CrossFit, right? Constantly varied functional movement executed at high intensity, right? So I say working at CrossFit is like doing CrossFit, constantly varied functional operations executed at high intensity. We're a small group. We have to work hard, but we don't shy away from it. We're used to that. We go in an hour a day and we get through some hard workouts. And so I think that mindset carries over, and we're constantly trying to improve, just like in a workout. Hey, can I perform a clean and jerk better and more efficiently? How do I get better at my work capacity and in this workout? Or how do I get better at rowing and not be as fatigued? Or how do I recover better? And I think that carries over a lot here. So,
what are those similarities?
I think
sense, would you say?
Yeah, I think from a business sense, like I said, I think if you we're constantly trying to get better. So I think that there's perfect example, we hold like I said, the CrossFit Games and some of these events on the sports side that are very much more at the forefront publicly than maybe the education side or the affiliate side. But, we host these large events. We always download afterwards what worked, what didn't work. We do it as a large group, but we also do it in departments. And they're very good about, from a project management, being able to start the project, being very clear about the objective, building out that ahead of time and building those processes, but then at the end, closing it out correctly and trying to figure out what worked, what didn't work.
Yep.
I think that's a key component. I think that I'd like to think, at least the relationships I've had, we've been very straightforward in the way we're having conversations. I think, as a financial leader, I think it's really important that communication be added to the list of things that you need to do.
Yep.
And understanding how to communicate directly, but also clearly, and not in a way that, maybe puts people on their heels,
right?
But as a way of helpfulness. I think that, you find yourself, at least here, you talk about the culture here. I think that we are very clear in what needs to get done and how we all help. So it's done with an intent of a positive intent behind it.
Yeah.
Awesome. We say that in the CFO org a lot, is that, we assume positive intent. We're all running at a bunch of, million miles an hour.
Yep.
I'm assuming that, the people in the education department are trying to do the right thing.
That's right.
Even if they do something that annoys me.
That's right. Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm not gonna hesitate to jump on a call and be like, hey, why did we do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because here's what it caused. And they might tell me something and I go, oh, I never thought about that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's figure out a better way to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you need to break accounting to move the business forward and do things that'll break the accounting process to move the business forward. And, don't let the accounting tail wag the dog. But it's important. It makes the process a lot easier if you involve them in those decisions, right?
Yeah. And I know we've said that a bunch, but I think it can't be said enough, right? Is include us early. And I think it alleviates a lot.
Yeah. And that goes for all aspects, anything that falls under finance and accounting. Even in tax, we see
Yeah.
so much of taxes done after the year's already been done. We advise our clients to meet with us quarterly. We work with most of our clients on a quarterly basis to understand how the year is going, what changes can be made in the year to optimize strategy. If you don't analyze things until they're done and they have to be filed, you can't make any adjustments.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We meet with, so our US, tax team, we meet with a couple times a year,
Yep.
To talk about everything that's going on. Happen to be lucky and fortunate that we also can have them come over here and do a workout with us and just talk about what's going on. So it's a little bit of a different culture than most companies, I would say.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is we make sure we meet with them, before the year and talk about, timeline. And then usually midway through the year,
Yep.
kind of have a conversation. We're international as well. So, we make sure we have statutory audits and we have tax returns, due in different countries where we have, subsidiaries. I make sure that, at the beginning of the year, we have an established timeline, because they need to know, hey, we're going through a US GAAP audit. We won't have, we'll have the trial balances for the foreign returns done at, this time. How soon can the audits get done? Because then when we go to file the US tax returns, we need all those foreign returns done so we could estimate for foreign tax credits, but it's always nice to have it all done inside that 10/15 deadline.
Yep.
And then, afterwards, we talk about what happened well and what didn't. And then, I've got, from the audit side, we have a partner, and from the tax side, we have a partner. I consult with them throughout the year. I think most recently we were looking at, it hadn't been done in the past, but a big component of our company is the licensing of our name, our trademark, and a lot of times those legal expenses have been expensed. And the reality is defending that trademark is a capitalizable asset. It's an asset that it's only increasing the value of our asset as well, because it's defending, it's creating, precedent, for go forward defensive
Right.
of our trademark, and being able to just get on the phone. I called both of them. I said, hey, we're thinking about doing this. Just want to make sure, in years past we hadn't done this. In years going forward, we want it to be presented right. What's the best way about doing this? Here's the research I've done, and they're really great about it. So I think it's really nice. I know a lot of people shy away from that, but it reduces a lot of headache up front, or in the long term. Just
That's
for
great.
upfront.
And to that point specifically, I think so many entrepreneurs only focus on their P&L, but at the end of the year, they only want to focus on how much tax they owe, and they don't understand the interplay between expensing things, which lowers your taxable income, and putting something on the balance sheet, which can present the business in a better light financially if you're looking to get investment, or if you're looking to get a loan. And so those things are a seesaw. They go in opposite directions. So you have to really understand who you're trying to optimize for and what the overall goals in the long term are for the business.
Yeah, agree.
So before we get into some closing questions, what would you say is the single best decision you made in your financial career? Anything that's impacted businesses?
Scum's going to stun me. You know what? I'll be honest. I think, okay, this is going to sound corny, but I really do enjoy it. Getting into a leadership role, I think individuals can get into a leadership role because they want to grow in their business. They want to grow in their career, and they want to get paid more and all this other stuff. As you get into a leadership role, you realize it's less about you and more about your team. And to be honest with you, I like focusing on the team's growth, individual, business development has been really neat to see. And there have been, when I first got into private equity after leaving that group, Athletes Performance, I got into a private equity team, and there was an individual there he was from China. He studied in the US, and he just desperately wanted to get a job and just learn. And it was really fun to turn around and just like put all my effort on making him better. And eventually, getting him to a point where he could do my job kind of thing, having that mentality. Right. And so I think the best decision I've made going forward is when I tend to look at my team, how can I get them to eventually take over my job?
Yeah.
I know that sounds, that might sound silly, but I think it's a really neat mentality to have. I view leadership in kind of a servant leadership role is my job is to clear the obstacles away from a team that I consider to be an amazing team. Hire really great people and that are really able to get the job done and are go-getters. And I right now currently have an amazing team. And my job is really to get out of their way and make sure that that they can operate at full capacity. And so I think having that mental switch was the best decision I made in my financial career.
Awesome.
I know it might sound a little off topic.
No, that's great.
But,
so one more high-level finance question before we go into rapid fire. What advice would you give to finance professionals or entrepreneurs that are looking to scale a business? How should they look to the finance department and the role that it plays?
Okay, so I'd say develop some sort of, like we said this before, develop a foundation of accounting and finance understanding. If you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to learn everything, but have just a base of knowledge, right? I think a lot of people, I joke with my wife, everyone wants to go to Shark Tank and then just kind of, they don't see the other side of it. The reality is there's a lot of long hours as an entrepreneur, but once you get a deal with the sharks, they go through your financials and they ask you a million questions and they're always going to be constantly on you. So I think developing a strong foundation there, then, from the financial side, spend time getting to understand the business beyond the numbers. Have what I call a white belt mentality. Come in and ask why something's being done the way they are. Don't be judging, just understand, figure it out. You'll uncover so many opportunities just coming in. Even if you think you know the business, just come in and ask, how the widget gets made and learn how to do it. And then from there, you have the foundation, you're trying to understand everything, then start talking about like data analytics and embracing technology. Because I think like it's really easy to say that this software is going to solve my problems. But the reality is that software does solve that problem, but it changes the org structure that you have because now, your controller is doing different things now that they have a full-blown ERP system than they were when you kind of were doing it more manually. Like, right, the objectives change. And if you know the core of what needs to happen, you can kind of make those and pull those cords accordingly. And then, really develop early on a strategic partnership with the finance team as an entrepreneur. And as a financial person, start developing relationships outside of the financial team, right? Understand what's going on. Go out to the shop floor and learn how something's being made because it gives you so much context into what you're doing and why you're doing it. And you'll spot things when you're looking at it and say, God, why are we doing this with this vendor? We could be changing this contract. Hey, Larry and in this department said that, he's having trouble with this. Why don't we, there's an opportunity to change his contract or to do something. And even those little changes make a big difference along the way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of the foundational advice I would give.
I love that. All right. So some rapid fire questions to take us
Rapid
out.
fire. Let's do it.
What's one financial tool or software you can't live without?
Gut reaction is Excel. I know that's probably not the right thing people want to hear. Something like a robust cloud-based ERP system or something like that. Even when I'm on calls with people, I open up Excel because they're telling me something and I'm like, okay, what did the numbers work out to? How does that work? How does that play? And that's just how my brain works, but I use it I use it as a 10 key. So Excel is my go-to.
What is the best piece of financial advice you've ever received?
I think we talked about this a little bit. Understand the balance sheet. So I was working at a CPA firm and one of the partners, he just said, like, the rest falls in place. Who cares about that if the balance sheet's right? So you can gain so much insight into the company health, seeing a balance sheet over time, especially that if the balance sheet's right, everything else, that's pluses and minuses on the profit and loss, right? And I'm not trying to minimize that. I know PE firms talk about EBITDA and, gross profit and all that stuff, but you talk about long-term success being around in 10 years, that balance sheet needs to be right. I know that wasn't rapid fire. I'm trying to give rapid fire answers. I'll try to be more concise.
That was great. What's one common financial oversight companies should avoid?
I mean, we talked about a lot of things, right? Clean data, garbage in, garbage out, not forecasting cash flow properly. But I think too much data, getting lost in the weeds, not understanding the company. But all that stuff, I think it really dwindles down to inefficient record keeping. You need to have the right numbers. You need to be ahead of time. You need to know what the numbers are, how they're presented, and how you can present it. So presenting the financials correctly is a common oversight that many companies have. They tend to just say, okay, that belongs there, and it's just not think about it.
Awesome. What's your favorite book or resource on financial management or leadership?
For financial management, when I first became a CFO, there was a book called CFO Guidebook. I know that sounds like CFO for Dummies, but that was a good book that I read just to understand what the heck I was supposed to be doing. I thought that was really great. If I'm talking about leadership, there's a book called First Break All the Rules. And for strategy, I would say Infinite Game by Simon Sinek.
Oh, amazing. Alex, thanks a lot for the time. Where can people find you if they're looking to learn more about you or CrossFit?
CrossFit.com. If you want to know about that, email is alex@crossfit.com. So that's simple enough. And I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Amazing. Alex, thank you so much for the time today and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to 5 to 50. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with other business owners looking to grow. Do you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Connect with us on LinkedIn or reach out to us at ProSeer, where we're empowering entrepreneurs with real-time, actionable insights and financial infrastructure through smarter accounting, tax, and financial strategies. Let's keep this conversation going. Together, we'll help our businesses thrive. Talk to you soon.